Evangelicals made up 26% of the vote for the midterms, and in Florida it was reportedly among 30%, where Republicans won some very tight races. Ralph Reed with the Faith and Freedom Coalition spoke with CBN News during our special election night coverage about the power of the evangelical vote.
Well, someone who knows a thing or two about the power of evangelicals is Ralph Reed with the Faith and Freedom Coalition, and he joins us now. Ralph, thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
Ralph, what do you make of this big upset in Florida?
I tell you, it's a big win. This is, I think, the most expensive gubernatorial race in the history of Florida. I think both sides spent over $100 million between them, and we knocked on almost 500,000 doors in Florida, had 5,500 churches that distributed over 2 million voter guides, and we were texting about 1 million voters a day as early voting was going on. We knew the evangelicals were coming. That's an extraordinary number, 30%. I assume that's in the network exit poll, David, the 30% number for Florida.
That's right. That's a CNN exit poll.
I'm going to have to go back and check it, but there's no precedent for that in the modern history of Florida. That's an extraordinary number, and I think the White House and the RGA and the National Republican Senatorial Committee and certainly Ron DeSantis and Rick Scott are very grateful tonight that the rapture didn't happen before early voting began, because if it had, they would have lost in a landslide. And the evangelicals delivered this vote in a big way, and of course Donald Trump deserves an enormous amount of credit. He came in and endorsed Ron DeSantis in that primary, took a guy who had very low name ID, was not well known statewide, against a guy in Adam Putnam, who, by the way, is a very good man, had run statewide and won twice before, was the runaway front runner in that race. And Donald Trump's endorsement is what caused Ron DeSantis to win that primary by 20 points. And his endorsement is why he's governor tonight.
Ralph, I want to ask a real quick question for you. You had mentioned earlier that there were some 26.1 million evangelicals that you had been tracking around the country in some of these hotly contested races. Does this at all surprise you, this race here in Florida, this governor's race, does it all surprise you based on what you've been doing and what you've been tracking with your group?
No, again, we've been tracking the early vote literally nightly. We've been getting updates from the Secretary of State. We've had 19 canvassing teams walking neighborhoods along the I-4 corridor in Orlando and Miami-Dade, in the Panhandle around Jacksonville, in Hillsborough County and Pinellas around Tampa and St. Pete. I don't think there's an organization in the country that's not a political party that personally touched 1 million voters or more at their doorstep. And we felt a level of intensity and enthusiasm that we have not seen in a long time. And we felt like they were coming. They were going to come in big numbers, and they did. Obviously, we'll look at the totals once they come in from the roughly 3 million voters we were tracking. But if our numbers are right, and it was 30% of the vote, that means we had almost as many people vote on election day as we had vote early. That means we're going to end up with somewhere between 2.5 and 3 million evangelical voters in Florida.